Thank you. This is the Fallbrook Regional Health District Facilities Committee meeting on May 17th, 2 p.m. I'm calling the meeting to order and ask for the roll call.
Director Jeffries.
Here.
Director Miraz is absent.
Do we have any public comments lurking about? Okay, all right. So let's just do it. We have our guests. Did we have somebody coming to speak to us?
He, his flight got changed and he's now currently on an airplane. So I'm gonna go ahead and roll through his PowerPoint when we get to that. And then we can just have a brief discussion. You can direct whatever level we go to next.
All righty. All right, so we'll wait for that for 3G. Okay, so he was coming here for other reasons than us. Is that what you're telling me?
No, he was gonna zoom in.
Oh, and he got stuck on a plane.
Now he's on a plane.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he was gonna be able to just do it.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay, very, very good. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask for an update on 3A through E.
Perfect. So most of the cosmetic, if you will, items for the education building are completed. The exterior lights on the building, I think Hayden was already there. Those have been completed. The one thing that we had really been waiting for in the education building was the exterior painting.
Yes.
So reached out to a couple of different vendors. One just straight up won't do steel buildings. It requires a whole different process and they didn't want to do it. So I went back to our primary painter who provided us a bid. Right there. So that's $18,850. That's for the exterior of the steel building as well as the full shade structure.
Okay.
So this would do all the prep, getting rid of the rust and those pieces.
All the
taking
deferred maintenance.
All the deferred maintenance. And then that includes all the material, all the label. So at $18,850, it's actually, even though that seems high, it seems pretty standard. I checked with our informal construction consultant, besides work. And again, we're getting consistent that even though the prices seemed
Well,
higher,
that's a big building.
it's a big building.
And just the prep
The prep
to get the steel ready to go is gonna be quite
and the fact that the current paint that's on there, what he's indicating to us was probably not the right kind of paint, where they didn't do the right second prep, because it shouldn't be peeling like that.
Right.
So he can guarantee that we won't have that kind of peeling again with that prep.
What is the, generally paint jobs have a guarantee for a certain number of years?
Right, and I would have to go back and ask, because I didn't ask that question, but it's standard, it's warranted work. It's a special paint that they have to use on steel buildings. So he let me know it's usually about $80 a gallon.
Yeah.
And it has to have 2 coats to prep it. So the idea was to go ahead and then he sent us a second bid, just, we see all the typos and he's like, he says I was doing it late at night.
I see.
Yeah,
Procedure.
so he was like, oh my God, did you get the second one? I'm like, what? No.
Okay.
Anyway, so he apologized for the typos, which case I told him not to worry about. So that's the bid that he's gotten to us. I'm comfortable with it. We know him as a vendor. We know his team. They get in, they get it done. We've had no problems with the rest of their work. So it falls under the amount we need to, that would have to force it to go out to bid.
Right.
But it's above my singular signing value.
Right.
Now, where did the gutters fit in?
The gutters are a completely separate vendor. They'll have to come in and put in gutters afterwards.
Okay, gutter pending.
Yeah, gutters are a separate,
Are you sure it's best to put afterwards or before?
afterwards, 100%. Yeah, we had a conversation about that. They would have had to remove gutters to paint and then put them back on. I explained to the fact that our current gutters, he's seen it and knows it's.
Are you gonna remove these?
They'll remove the ones that are on there and then we'll go out and finalize. I've got a couple of gutter people. That doesn't sound right. Gutter installers.
You've been gonna hang out with the better people than gutter people.
Sorry, it was didn't sound right. Some additional vendors that could put on other gutters after the fact. They can't do their standard extrusion type because of the steel, whatever, but there's a couple of different vendors that I've asked to come and take a look at.
Then when they remove them, there are gonna be holes there.
They'll probably just, the way that they have a weird thing that they slide in. And then they would steel bolts back probably into those same existing holes. That's the information that.
And it's the right time of season for that, because hopefully we won't get too much sun.
Rain should be over, so
Yeah.
that gives us it gives us the summer to finalize the gutter process. We'll probably also need to look at some of those gutter drains. I know we fixed a lot of them, that first year we were out there.
Right.
But there's gonna be probably some others we're gonna wanna look at, but it'll be better once the gutters are off the building.
I would suggest when we go look for gutter people, we would need to ask about the cost of covering them too with the mesh.
Yes,
So nobody has to get on a ladder and be cleaning them out, right?
right,
Yeah, so gutters with covers.
right, and there's also, as I recall, I'll have to go back and check with maybe Keith, at North County Fire, there was a conversation about getting those, because they have a better fire protection to them as well. Cause it can't, the
Yeah,
embers can't
can't
land
get
in
in
there or
there.
something.
Then did we decide anything on the outside water fountains? Because now would be the time to make a decision, whether to keep them or get rid of them.
Those have already been removed.
They have, okay.
Yeah, we did remove those because they were leaking and different things,
Right,
so.
right.
We've talked about looking at some options either to grant fund them different. There's different opportunities to have the water bottle refilling stations
Yeah,
put in
yeah.
instead of water fountains.
Yeah,
So,
that would be a better option.
yeah, and we can already do it with the existing plumbing
Right.
that was there.
Yeah.
So that, you know,
Well,
that
it
will,
encourages people to bring their own containers,
yes,
and it's sanitary.
it's sanitary.
And, you know, can you imagine us now putting our head down to a water fountain going, I think not.
You know what? That just doesn't work for me anymore.
Okay,
That whole visual just.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you for moving that along, team. I know it takes a village here to get that done. Any more questions about the paint job on the, okay, what else do you know?
So
Keep going.
he'll bring us a few other, colors. I told him that I would let him know, hopefully after today, that we would expect we would be able to move forward. That he would get us some paint samples, and then we would be able to probably get it done before, maybe even before the end of the month, which would be nice, so that we can start the summer with a nice clean.
Yeah.
Look to it.
And just to verify, the funding for this is in the current budget,
It's in the community,
in the
it's in,
community,
investment fund.
yeah. And available.
Yes,
And it'll be a 22-23 expenditure?
yes,
Good. Okay, let's end the year right.
yes. So that's the exterior painting for the education building, exterior lights are done. House of Wellness, ADA compliance update, and the exterior house paint update and the gutters update are, all a little bit pending. The potential, follow-up conversation with Site Logic, part of that has to do with, they have the potential to be able to serve as architect builder on that. Otherwise, we have to go out and get engineering and a new architect
For the bathrooms.
for the bathrooms. Because we're gonna have to bust out that, what looks like they probably enclosed a small patio at one point, for that one, we're going to
For
have
the
to.
outside,
For the.
for the inside.
For the inside, it looks like we're going to have to make that the restroom entrance, which means we're gonna have to move all the plumbing. At that point, in addition, the front door threshold is not gonna meet ADA compliance, so we've got, several different ADA pieces we're gonna have to fix for that house.
So we're saying that we acknowledge that, and we know we need engineering/architectural support,
Right,
and Site Logic might be able to be a one-stop shop.
potentially, yes. So I wanna hear from them on that as an option, because if we can wrap all those services together instead of having to purchase and pay for 2 or 3 times, that might be kind of nice.
Yeah. Okay,
How about the ADA parking for that building?
That would be part of the same conversation. Yeah, when we did the site walk with them, that area, when you're pulling it into the front of the house, the previous residents, you can tell they made their own little parking space off there to the right. That space, all the way down to the current concrete, that whole area would have to be flattened and straightened out, which would be part of that parking lot process. Cause then we could have our full ADA with no challenge.
And were there any ADA issues at the education building as far as those bathrooms? They're okay.
They're okay.
they probably had to be ADA compliant because it was a school setting,
Right,
Right.
that space was public where the house was private,
yeah.
so we
The
don't. have to worry
vicar
about
lived
that.
there.
Right. So, I'm just kind of keeping an eyeball on everything that has to do with the house, which includes that backyard plan. That's all part of the brief conversation I had with Site Logic. So obviously that'll have to get kicked probably to June's, facilities meeting.
Mhm. Okay. Goody. All right. What else are you gonna tell us?
Well, let's go ahead and go to the Site Logic proposal, presentation thingy that he sent you.
Okay, we're moving to G.
We're moving to G.
Okay, and that's otherwise known as Site Logic,
Yes, sorry.
even though it says FirstNet, AT&T.
Oh, it's F, I'm sorry. F is
Oh,
begin
F.
preparation for parking lot.
I'm
paving
sorry,
project.
I skipped a beat there. Okay, here we go.
That's okay.
And this is just to refresh my memory, this is the organization that might be able to do our solar array.
Yes,
And including the parking lot, including where's the meter, including maybe the House of Wellness.
yeah. So the conversation with Site Logic started, with such that I went to them and said, hey, we're interested in doing this infrastructure for solar car port, EV charging. We're about to redo our parking lot. If you guys were able to, come online for the solar, would you need to kind of have that conversation before we started the parking lot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Chicken and egg, right? And he said, well, we do that
Okay.
whole scale thing. So hence they came out and we started that conversation.
So,
Can you find it? Yeah.
okay, so we would listen to their perspective.
Correct.
And then, because it's gonna be a large project and beyond the bid limit, so
Oh, absolutely.
we would invite bids in.
Potentially, because it's professional services for the design, we don't have to do the same bid process. But we would, at this point, then move to Jeff
Got it,
for direction.
okay, very good, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have, and
Oh,
this would be
actually-
provided to our board colleagues at some point, what I'm seeing here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, this was just a basic intro first.
okay.
I'll let you screen share and then I'll walk you. All right, perfect. So, this was just expected to be this is who we are presentation, not a specific, this is what we're gonna do to your project
That's a
level.
beautiful shot of Rosemary's Mountain,
Right? They did a good one. Next slide.
gosh.
So, Josh Stever is the gentleman I met through CSDA. This is a little bit about their company. Because he's not here, I say we can probably skip it.
Yeah.
But they are responsible with, from the start of the project, making sure that all of the permitting, all of the design work, all the arrangement of subs. So basically, they would start with the design component, like an architect, engineering, all those pieces. And then they almost serve as project management as well as they move through. Now, there's some pros and cons to them serving both sides of that,
Yeah,
but it's
have
not.
they worked in San Diego County before?
They have worked quite a bit in San Diego County, lots of special districts, lots of
So
municipalities.
they know our county planning.
Yes.
Mantra.
Yeah.
Okay,
So the primary conversation came about the fact that we were looking for solar carport, as well as the potential to upbuild into a battery wall so that we could go off the grid at some point. So he's taking all of those wish list ideas and talking about that here. part of the other thing they do is because there's options for funding through the Inflation Reduction Act and a few others. They wanted to look at this building and build in potential solar here because it goes by the entity. And if we as the entity could put together more, we would get more funding back to help
Gotcha.
underwrite more of it.
Yeah.
So it's a
So we
little
could
bit,
get 2 sites
we could get
in
two
the
sites.
process.
Correct. Next one. Please. So this is the, again, sales pitch to some extent,
Okay, we
Well,
agree.
we
should
all agree.
implement
Let's go to the
energy
next one,
programs.
right? Again,
Yeah.
our goal, we know that we want to do all of these things and he listed it out for us, so we can skip to the next one. It's be much faster without him. Explaining that essentially we're creating our own microgrid this way by having the battery system, the solar, building it in. Okay, next one.
I didn't know we had a red building, but okay.
Well, again, a little bit more of the sales point. The EV charging, I think that has been one of the conversation pieces from day one here.
I have new feelings about that, so let me know when you want me to say them.
You might as well say them now.
Okay, I was the proponent of an EV charging capacity. I have new thoughts. The first one is, I've seen some pretty horrendous arguments at EV charging stations. People arguing with each other, get off, get in, don't like that. And I worry about that because people are getting pretty freaked out about not enough EV working. The other problem is so many, like down in Vista, they have a whole bank by the Panera there, probably 15 of them. Only 4 of them were working at one time. Uncertainty of use. And you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna go into our staff and say, hey, there's a problem out here. Kind of like a vending machine when you can't get your Coke out.
Right.
The other is one or two is a drop in the bucket in this town. We have 2 at the library right now. I don't know if we have any others. I'm just. FPUD has a couple, so it'd be interesting to talk with them, about how it's gone. But I do, with the pent up apparent emotions in our culture right now, I do, with a scarce resource and a growing number of people who want that resource, I'm a little worried about complications from the public. And we're not gonna be able to say, you can only use this if you're attending something here.
Right.
Anybody can drive in and plug in. They have no linkage to us, no social contract with us.
Right.
And it's just for them to get charged up.
Right.
So I'm having alternative feelings. And I just want to put it in the mix. I'd say leave it on so that we can all kick it around.
Okay.
And if you can find out from the library and FPUD their experience, that would be helpful data.
Yeah. I'll follow up with both.
I think you're right. I don't see an upside to it.
Yeah.
Well, the upside is that in when we get to part of the Inflation Reduction Act, part of the reason that's put out there is so that EV charging
Okay,
grid can be built out.
we'll have to balance.
So that's part of that.
Yeah.
But we can talk about what,
If we
what that
don't
means.
do it, what happens? If
Yeah.
it's this much, we may not want to do it.
Correct.
Okay,
okay.
thank you
so-
for listening.
Yep, next. So the initial thing that he put forward is, you can see where there's 2 little charging stations and 1 bit of covered. This is the first time he's just given me, again, back of the envelope. I was thinking the parking lot that it butts the dirt field area, that area should also be solar carport area. So I don't.
Can you use a marker so we can tell what you're talking about in this
So
diagram?
right there.
Okay, what are you thinking about that?
That should also have solar carport right there in the parking lot space. So right now where the big blue
I
blob,
see.
blob is
Mhm.
the only part that he was talking about.
For charging stations?
No, for solar carport at all.
What
So-
about the existing, shade structure? Is he thinking about that?
No,
Okay.
just in that one spot. So I think we would have to have a much larger conversation about all of the solar, and this might be something he was going to address
Yeah.
that without him here, so.
So the question would be, what's the adequate number of solar parking areas, square footage to accommodate what we believe pays off for us?
Correct,
Okay, well, that's an important conversation then.
right. So let's
Okay,
go to the next. And then this is Brandon, so he just has that one solar area that's basically this far side of our parking lot. Looks like there's just one EV charging,
Mhm,
so if there was one spot here, couple of spots over there.
mhm.
Again, a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
So let's get
In
the-
concept, I like it.
in concept, I like it, right?
On the one at the wellness center, the only thing I'm concerned about is, I don't know how high they are. But if you're standing in front of the wellness center, which is elevated, are you going to be looking at the tops of solar panels?
As you walk out.
So that's, in other words, what's the view going to be?
Yeah, aesthetically,
Right.
what is that?
And that's a good question, whether or not they can be put up high enough so you're not looking straight down into it or you're just looking through.
Right,
So that'd have to be part of our design conversation with them, for sure.
so they might need to be pushed further away to the point area where you were
Yeah,
noting.
A double row there.
you can, you can only do the one because the parking space is one deep on that particular, and the middle area had two sided.
Yeah,
So, but that would all be design conversation.
okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Also, you had mentioned, or I think Teresa mentioned a couple of times the parking lot was full. And since the anticipation is to get it fuller, has there been thought to paving that dirt area and making the parking lot larger?
We can't pave that lower area from our major use permit. We can do some other semi-permeable product,
Like, gravel.
like a gravel, or there had been the idea of, forgot what it was called, but it was essentially those like
Yeah.
a cement block,
Like
so.
with grass.
Yeah.
Could you go back to
Pavers.
the wellness center one for a
Mm-hmm.
second? I want to explore it visually something. Okay, so,
Bigger. So just. Control.
so just for my own proportionality,
Have to use your mouse. Your mouse is weird too. Sorry, this is what happens when you play with somebody else's computer.
how well do I know that?
Never mind, hopefully we can.
Okay, yeah, so that purple deal
Yes,
in the middle, okay, that accommodates one row.
that's 2 rows.
That's 2 rows
That,
going in on either side.
correct.
Okay, so proportionately, when you move that over to the other side, it's only 1 row?
Correct.
Okay,
With
but
the current configuration of the parking.
yes. And so the idea that's at play is behind that single row, there might be a portion of an appropriate amount of the current dirt that could be either the kind you said, which was blocks, and then, or pea gravel
Something.
as
yes.
additional parking. So that's something to be considered because we do get packed sometimes.
Oh, yeah, that whole lower lot, the expectation is we could, essentially like they do at the ball fields, where you chalk outline the parking spaces. When we did our major use permit, there was, I don't have the number at the top of my hand, a number of, I wanna say another 100 parking spaces that you could build down there.
So we would call it overflow parking,
It's called overflow parking
Okay.
on the major use permit.
but it won't be asphalted, it will be pea gravel or
It would
something
have to
like
be
that.
something permeable,
Okay.
yes.
So that has implications for any multi-use of that dirt area.
Correct.
So a semi-permeable area could be where we could set, for instance, if we did a wellness fair, we could set tents up there
Absolutely.
on top of that. Okay, I'm looking for ways to keep it usable.
Multi-purpose.
Thank
for
you,
sure.
multi-purpose.
You are gonna grow into it,
Yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah.
are.
yeah.
It's all your fault. It's all your fault.
It's all Teresa's fault.
Okay, I'm getting it, girls. I'm getting it.
All good. Well,
Okay.
and we knew that this would be a discovery additional
Journey.
conversation, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go ahead and.
Okay. When we talk about a battery wall energy storage,
Yes,
are we talking about the capacity to store enough energy for a disaster? What are we thinking?
yes. The expectation is that we could be off the grid for some amount of time, which is why the solar panels array would have to be large enough and the battery storage would have to be large enough to support that. Whether or not we go the next level, which is also then to have a generator on site and then you're storing fuel on site. I don't think there's an appetite for that.
No, I don't think we want to be in that business.
No, so
So,
a battery wall supported by solar is more than reasonable.
okay, and so we could become a self-sustaining emergency evacuation center
Potentially,
and still have
yeah, even if we
power
weren't an
going.
evacuation center, we might be a triage space
Triage
for our
space,
first
okay,
responders, something
okay.
of that
Oh,
sort.
I like this, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So this was the funding opportunities that they were talking about, being able to bring forward some federal tax credits. You can see in the numbers, he's got that if we received the Inflation Reduction Act funding, that's 30%. We are technically considered disadvantaged communities, so we could get an additional 10%. Domestic manufacturing, that's our generating our own energy through the solar, get you an additional. The fossil fuels community, I forget exactly what that means, but basically up to 60% of our total project funding could be put forward from all of these funding sources.
And at least 40,
At least,
the 30,
40,
10, the
right.
30 and the 10, we
Right.
could, if we chose to, design it according to those rules.
yes.
Do we know if there's any downside to those rules?
There's no downside in that it's not, loans that have to be paid back, they are direct fund. The downside, if you will, is that you have to have enough funding to be able to front load it, and then you get reimbursed.
Well, we do.
We can do that, right? The other, component is there's probably gonna be some unforeseen costs.
Yeah.
For putting this in that we don't know. I still think overall, at the end of the day, it's gonna cost us less by being able to build in to the front. But I don't know what that looks like yet, because obviously we haven't gotten to that level of detail. But this is the part that was most exciting to me, the idea that
Yeah.
we could, still meet that one goal we've had of being more green out there,
Be more
being
green.
off the grid. But then to have some funding help pay for it,
Yeah,
that
well,
always
Yes.
works for me.
our tax dollars are coming back to us in a boomerang.
Exactly,
That's good.
exactly. So we'll head to the next. These are basically some of the things that they have to do. First, obviously, the board has to show there's buy-in, scope and funding assessment implementation plan. That's something that SiteLogic does. They bring it forward. That's part of where Jeff would have to make sure that we're following all the rules.
Mhm.
And then stakeholder outreach. He indicated that some places have had conversations about, I don't want solar in my neighborhood. I don't think that's our challenge out here, but we would probably still,
Oh, we would need to do tell us how you feel about this idea.
I love it.
Yeah, not you, the stakeholders.
I think because it isn't, right in the middle of town, I think because it's pushed off out of
Yeah.
the main view, I think there's probably a lot less pushback on it,
Yeah.
but we would, like everything else, we've got our
And our
neighbors.
neighbors, we gotta talk to our neighbors.
Now, the trees pretty much encompass the property, so we don't have to really worry about such visibility that it's gonna be messy for stakeholders, but I still think it's part of our community outreach duties anyway.
Yeah. Well, my sense of this is, this would be a very good thing for it to be presented to the full board.
Absolutely.
And it's got a lot to recommend it. And this is the logic, SiteLogic, who can do the one-stop shop for the solar energy and the asphalting and all of that. So we just finished going through their information, Barbara, and we'll go ahead and bring it to the full board to hear too. Okay?
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah,
All right.
their representative wasn't able to zoom in, he had flight changes. So the idea was we would just look at it for a first blush anyway.
Mhm.
The particular wrinkle that this adds is, you know, obviously there's been a motivation to get the parking lot done out there.
Mhm.
If we want to build for the future, we've just gotta make sure that we're doing it piecemeal. We either pay for a parking lot now and
Prove it later.
tear up and lose.
Yeah.
Cause no matter what.
Yep.
I did talk about potentially getting some information to maybe re-slurry and repaint the parking lot in the interim. I was pretty much told by all the authorities that that's a complete waste of our money, because it would immediately break down. The parking lot's in such bad shape
So
over there, it would fall apart.
Okay, so our choices are limp along
Limp along,
for a period of time and do a more systematic, holistic effort embedding all of these different elements in it. If we choose to do the parking lot now, we're gonna have the same problem when we wanna go in and do the solar. We're gonna have to rip it back up and do it again, you know, so we're between the devil and the deep blue sea on this.
Yeah.
Was there any sense of, is this a 3-year process? Is this a 18-month process? What?
I didn't get an actual scope, but he was saying anything from 6 months to a year is what he ballparked in our brief conversation. And some of that just really had to do with how quickly we move on things.
Yeah. Okay, so when this gets presented to the full board, that needs to be on the table. Because for me individually, if we've got a 6-month to a 12-month window, it's worth it to wait and do this whole broader, would you agree, Roy?
Yes.
Do the whole broader project and just be careful. We could do some chalking or something, to make it a safer parking lot. I don't expect you all to stand on your head and be chalking, but there are people with the little chalk thing,
So we bought the little paint roller
yeah,
that you use in
Yeah,
spray cans.
yeah.
I've done it a couple of times. I find it very zen motivating to just go out in the sun and be able to paint. I double checked with the high school because I figured they probably do the most parking lots,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The way they do it, their parking lot is already in better shape. It won't work on ours.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, really the best you can do is get the upside down paints, and I'm like, oh, so we need to order probably 12 cans.
But I would also recommend that we hire some part-time handy person to do it.
Yes, I did it during the summer, and I did it during COVID when I needed to take a break.
Okay.
Now
so
we don't have time.
But before we act on that, we need to have this conversation with the board.
For sure.
Because if there's 3 folks who feel, no, we want to do the parking lot now.
Right.
Then that seals the deal. So let's not go do it yet. And Roy, you'll be willing to support the wisdom of the more comprehensive plan?
You're talking about the 1-year plan, or we have to?
The 6 month to 6 to 12
Oh,
months
yes,
that we're
yes.
going to.
I think that makes the most economic sense.
It's important for us to know your perspective.
And I think, you know, as bad as the parking lot is, it will last a year.
And we can make it safer with some markings.
But I also think if we look at restriping, I don't know why you're doing it yourself. There are restripe companies that'll do that for under a couple of $1,000s.
Yeah, we've literally just been band-aiding it. And
Okay.
we've been doing it as just
They'll measure the spaces, do it accurately.
That's probably a better way to go.
Oh, it is.
Okay, so
It
don't
is.
order the can.
Yeah. We've been just doing it as a Band-Aid temporary.
Yeah.
Only because we didn't know.
Yeah.
What our next immediate step
So it
is.
feels to me like we should have on the discussion item is the notion of hiring a striping company to do the interim striping. Does that make sense?
Right, I met with one regarding the library parking lot.
I bet you did.
And they're talking, this was 4 months ago, it was $1,500. So
Oh,
we're not
and-
talking a lot of money.
Yeah, let's just.
Oh, I'll take that reference.
Okay.
Okay,
That'd be awesome.
cool.
So then this is presented to the board or to strategic planning,
No, this will go from facilities to the board.
to the board at our next board meeting?
Yeah.
And then will we be doing the presentation on this based on?
No, I'll have the actual site logic representative present the whole thing for discussion.
And then you'll have the numbers, cost.
No, they're not, we have to give an authorization letter for them to even start doing things.
Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, because we can't know the cost until they at least
Until we say,
design out
"Please tell us the cost."
system.
You know, they have to have access to our property, we have to give that, so.
Do we need permits for this? No.
Of course,
The whole 9 yards?
yeah, of course.
Okay.
Anything doing
Yeah.
done with our property requires that, but Roy's been in on this conversation and will be a source of information too.
So what we'll do is we'll ask Josh to come back and do this full presentation. It will be a conversation discussion piece at the
Yeah.
board. Obviously, I think that this is a several conversation level. It's not a just one and done kind
Yeah.
of conversation.
Okay, well, thank you for all that pre-work. Okay, now tell us about 3G, a communications tower.
Okay, so, yeah, crazy stuff when it rains and it pours. I was, contacted by the Western Fire Chiefs Association, which is a group that has been, essentially contracted with FirstNet. Now, FirstNet is the entity that's working with AT&T to build out these communication towers, specifically so first responder networks work during the event of wildfires. So last example the guy gave me was when the Lilac fire happened down here, first responders, their cells that they're using, their radios are on the same communication towers that all of our cell phones. So if that communication tower goes down,
Yikes.
they're losing communications as well, and they can only use their old-fashioned radio. That slows down their ability to do a lot of their internet-based mapping and modeling of where fires are going, things of that nature. So FirstNet was essentially the group that was awarded this project to build out these communication networks in the rural areas. That's what brought them to us. They want to be able to put in a communication tower. Now, communication tower means AT&T is the one who really wants to pay for it, because then they get first right on it, but they can't have sole proprietorship. So FirstNet gets it, but that means AT&T, Verizon, or a few others. It's basically a cell tower.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it is. They are interested in looking at the Mission property to put one of these towers. The other side of that, besides the fact that it has a better ability to serve our first responders in our community, is that also they pay a rent to use your property for that cell tower.
Yep.
So it would generate funds for us, and it would strengthen our first responder communication network in this area.
Cool. Well, first responder networks are important.
Absolutely.
Especially out here. I have a walk scheduled with them on Friday, just to get the first kind of blush. But I wanted to bring it to this committee to make sure there's at least some level of appetite that we'd be willing to entertain further discussion, before we do that walkthrough. Where it would be on the property, what size it would be, what would be on it, that has to be part of the follow-up conversation, obviously. But they're gonna bring out their engineer that does the towers and identify where it would go, what kind of space would it take up, what kind of
Yeah,
landscape.
what's its footprint?
Right, I mean, obviously, I don't think we want it right at the front, we don't want it, I mean, they're not necessarily all that attractive, whether
They
you've
aren't.
got a fake
Yeah.
palm tree or a fake pine tree or a art piece, it doesn't matter. We don't want that at the front, so whether or not it's even viable, we don't know until after we do the walkthrough with them, so.
What do you think?
As long as we get to decorate it. Incorporate it into the overall picture.
We'll see.
I'm wondering why they wouldn't be looking at the North County Fire offices on Mission. First.
On Main,
No, as you're going out of Fallbrook,
That's Cal
That's
Fire.
CAL FIRE.
Cal Fire.
CAL FIRE already has theirs up on that red mountain
The Red
area, they
Mountain
have some up there. The idea is that they're trying to keep a network of them, so that if one goes down,
You've got it.
you've got multiples that they can relink to.
Makes sense, makes sense. Because we're stuck out here when it comes to communication in the event of, catastrophes. We've had those happen in the past, and it is, you're lucky you can get the news to get out of town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the idea is that this would support the first responder networks, whether it's CAL FIRE and North County Fire, anyone that uses certain bandwidths, they would get first right. So let's say something's coming through and, you know, Raquel's there on her AT&T cell phone, they would kick her off the network first so that they had complete bandwidth.
Yeah.
Now, I think in a disaster, okay, that's kind of fine, a trade-off. We're gonna put out your
I'll
fire
accept
versus,
that.
you know,
Yeah.
Just that one time.
just that one time.
Yeah.
We did have a cell tower application when we first got that property,
Yes,
Oh, do tell.
Bobby. I'm sorry.
and it fell through
Mhm.
for whatever reason, but the two things we have to be careful about is, one, it's going to have to go through the planning group.
Yep,
And the biggest issues that have happened when cell towers have gone to the planning group is there's a group of people that feel that the radio waves affect your brains.
Yeah, and
And they don't
come.
want it near their homes.
Mhm.
There've been some pretty heated meetings in the past where cell
Very.
towers were going to go. There was one at the Baptist church, which is at Stagecoach
And Reggie.
and Reggie. And then it was a very heated meeting. All the neighbors were there arguing about cancer and all that. What made it finally go through was the benefit to the community.
Right,
That overrode everything else. And so I think that's going to have to be the approach if this is gonna go through, that it's going to be of a emergency benefit to the community.
yes.
And
Yeah,
so
that's
we
gonna
have
be
to be
a
careful.
seminar.
It could create some ill will
Yeah.
among the local
Yeah.
people.
I mentioned to my conversation with the chief that I spoke with about the fact that it would have to go through local planning group and he said, we do this in the rural communities specifically, so they were very familiar with rural planning group conversations, so I didn't clue them into ours uniqueness by any means, but.
And the other, if I remember, I was at that meeting. The other was aesthetics.
Right,
So you might, when you go by that church, you will see they encased it in a huge structure that looks churchy.
oh.
Okay, they encased it, remember that?
Right, they made it look like it's part of the building.
Got part of the building.
In this case, they can make it look like a tree or a water tower.
Right.
Yeah, water
anything. So
tower
they
would be
can-
great.
They can do those sort
So,
of.
reference our agricultural history, please. So Barbara, can I make a suggestion? How about if it comes back to us after you do the walkthrough?
Mhm.
And in June, we'll hear all about the walkthrough, get more information before we move it out. Does that feel okay to you?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, I should have all the good information by then, and I can bring it back to this.
well, don't
committee.
get any bad information and
Well-
give it to us.
All the full information.
There you go, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay,
And looking at the time frame of, you know, how soon they would want to, put it on the property and what we have to go through, so it coincides with our planning, so that it doesn't disrupt with what we're doing. But if it's generating revenue, it's gonna be a blessing to begin with. Secondly, the fact that it is needed in the community, the community is growing, and it's gonna continue to grow.
and one of the things we'll know from the walkthrough is what the options of placements are, because there may be an option for placement that will not affect anything else we're doing, so let's get that information
Mhm.
and we'll go from there.
Yep,
Okay. Excellent. Okay, we're on item 4, board member comments and future agenda items. Barbara, I think our contribution to the strategic plan meeting on Saturday is this, right? So when they ask for the strategic plan committee's ideas of 2 to 3 years out, would you agree that it has to do with pursuing all of the agreed upon recommendations for the mission property?
Agreed upon recommendations.
That the board has agreed to as we've been going along that our contribution, we aren't suggesting we build a new building. We're not suggesting that we buy more property. I think our suggestion is that as the board approves different projects for that property, including the solar, including the tower, whatever,
And the parking lot.
and the
et cetera.
parking lot, that whole array of things. That is our recommendation for strategic planning, that we pursue that in the first, second, and third year if needed, but certainly the first and second year, so that property cuts up to speed.
Absolutely, because it depends on, we are going to prioritize what projects are being brought forward.
Yeah.
And then the necessity and then how expedient it can be accomplished to the rest of the program so that we can keep the momentum
There you
going.
go.
Because the worst thing that we need is another, emergency, something happened, we gotta pull out all the stops. I mean, the paperwork, the bureaucracy, all that, waiting for the permits and stuff. Okay, fine, I understand that, but we can still have other things going. And so if one area has a bit of a hiccup, we're still working to move forward in another area.
Yeah, coordination of effort.
Yeah.
So, I think that's how I'll characterize our thoughts, because we're not bringing forth any new projects. It's things that are already in the hopper that we're
Right.
saying are our strategic priorities for facilities.
Right.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or future agenda items?
I have a little concern about the tower and the what will happen after that. I mean, I'm all for making us a center for support for the community wellness and to support emergency situations and communications. I'm wondering if this will open a door to additional purview of the property as a site for maybe triage or fire in the, triaging, or in the event that something happens, we become the location.
So,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, part of that had to do a little bit with the site logic, the idea of putting in enough solar and battery wall that we could be off the grid. We don't know exactly how, the property is too small to be a true evacuation center.
Uh-huh.
We're just not big enough. Whether or not, either CAL FIRE or North County Fire would want to use us as a staging area would really be up to them. We have to start let me back up. I have had some conversations with Kevin at North County Fire of, hey, what would it take for us to be of support to you in this format? His general comments back to me were, if the fire district wanted to use that for staging, they need to make sure that they have access to plenty of water and power, right? So we're talking about the power piece primarily. We don't even know if we could offer that up until we know what we're willing to do with the property.
Right.
So that has to be a follow-up. I think it is a constant part of our conversation. We don't want to build or do anything to it that eliminates the opportunity for us to be a resource to them.
Right.
But I think that has been underscored in all of our developmental conversations.
And, we would like to be a partner with them, with the, the JPA that we have to move in the direction that they're hoping to improve quality of service and safety to the community as well.
I think, the way that we're designed now, we support them in that. In depending on the size of a potential disaster,
Yeah,
it would pretty much get everybody out of Fallbrook no matter what.
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
We're just too encapsulated. Send people north or send people.
I will say, for instance, if we had a major fire and they had to bring in crews from all over and they're working in shifts. I know at one time we made Potter Junior High auditorium available for the people who are off duty to sleep.
Right.
And they came in and out and in and out. I can see that happening. So,
absolutely.
it's just, we're never gonna know all, but our size will limit what we can do.
St. Peter's is another large
Yeah.
facility
Yeah.
that has the big auditorium with
Right.
the kitchen facilities and what
Right.
have you, and they're very supportive. They're a big parking lot.
Yeah.
There are a
Yeah.
lot of places thank God, in our town where we could accommodate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we do put in, eventually get to the point where we put in the demonstration kitchen, then we could manage something
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
So those are, I think, ongoing levels of conversation.
Okay. Well, good. Here, Roy, any other items that you would like to bring to the fore? Okay. Barbara, anything from you?
I'm just looking forward to, I apologize for being late today. I don't know why I thought the meeting was at 2:30. Maybe I had a document that had that on it, it's just a glitch, but I apologize for my tardiness. Not, notwithstanding, I'm very dedicated to seeing that we move forward and do what we can to get things going. And, when we have this event this weekend, will we have public input? Will they be coming as well?
It's a
Every
board
public
meeting.
Meeting is.
It's a board meeting.
Yeah. So potentially, if anybody shows, it'll be a long day.
I was just wondering if you had any,
There will be some public who are interested in the grant conversation.
I see.
Whether or not they're gonna stay for the rest, I don't.
Okay. Just to be continued,
There you go.
positively to be continued, okay?
Okay, with that, I'm going to adjourn.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor, I'm gonna lose to